Media's influence is often underestimated. Whether we realize it or not, it teaches us what to think to some degree. We'd all like to think we're not that impressionable, and that we can separate what we see on screen from reality, but sometimes that's not the case. Media is just a reflection of how our society thinks and functions, and so it's not necessarily that we believe the things we see on screen as their literal interpretations, but rather we recognize that the things we're shown are born out of the dominant ideologies of our time. And these are the ideologies that permeate our culture and therefore shape our understanding of the world around us and how we fit into it. So, what am I rambling about exactly? I'd like to chat about how media influences our discussions surrounding mental illness. Let me ask you something. How often is mental illness portrayed on screen? A decent amount, right? But out of those times, how often is it used to induce fear? How often is it used to highlight how dangerous and violent someone can become on account of their illness? The times when mental illness is portrayed in a more forgiving light, it's often used as a way to tell a tragedy. Even if the writers set out to make us empathize with these characters and to humanize individuals suffering from mental illness, the message we end up getting in the end is that they can't possibly have a happy ending. We look to see ourselves represented in the media we consume, and so it can be disheartening when you're shown your own mirror image time and time again, only to be shown that the likelihood of finding happiness is slim to none. Having representation is important, of course. Without it, we can feel alone, like there's something wrong with us, and like we're the only ones who ever felt this way. But having the wrong kind of representation can be just as harmful. So, where are we supposed to look to for positive representation? This is where BTS comes in. One of their biggest goals has always been to make us feel a little less alone. From their beginning, they wrote lyrics about things their audience could relate to: school, the pressure to succeed, having crushes, and so on. They weren't going out of their way to be relatable. That was just literally their life. They weren't big glamorous idols yet. They were struggling artists who were also students, working really hard to get by with what they had. They were just drawing inspiration from the things around them.
지나가면서 보는 것들 다 메모를 하고 막막하면 그때서 이제 메모 해놓은 걸 봐요. 이렇게 어떤 생각을 했지. 불과 뭐 한 달, 1년, 길게는 뭐 3년, 5년 전 거도 그때 내가 이 생각을 했구나. 그렇게 작업을 시작을 하는 것 같아요.
BTS never shied away from the topics that were important to them, even if those topics weren't what idols were meant to discuss. Starting from their early days, they tackled big issues, like media's perpetuation of unrealistic beauty standards or the problematic effects of commodity fetishism.
수십 자리 신발에 또 수백 자리 패딩 수십 자리 시계에 또 으스대지 개닉 교육은 산으로 가고 학생도 산으로 가 21세기 계급은 반으로 딱 나눠져 있는 자와 없는 자 쉬는 자와 없는 자 입은 자와 벗는 자 또 길을 써서 얻는 자 이게 뭔 일이니 유행해서 넌 밀리니 때를 쓰고 애를 써서 얻어내지 찔리지 너네 요즘
Now more than ever, they've highlighted mental illness as a cause to stand by, giving visibility and voice to those who are often left isolated or voiceless in mainstream media, and in society in general. With so much stigma and misunderstanding surrounding mental illness, the work they're doing to normalize it and create a safe space for discussion is invaluable.
사람들이 다 각자의 그런 우울함과 고독을 다 가지고 있잖아요. 저는 제가 음악을 하는 이유가 어쨌든 결과적으로 저도 제가 세상이 무섭고 내가 너무 슬프고 외롭고.
This is exactly why so many have formed such a strong bond with the boys and their music. They do everything they can to show us that we're not alone, and that it's okay to not be okay. Mental illness is normal and common, but it doesn't mean it isn't a big deal. By opening up the discussion, they've created a way to reduce stigma by mere exposure. If mental illness is never talked about, then it remains something that's perceived as rare and shameful. But the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, and the more we normalize it, the easier it is for someone to realize that there's no shame in seeking help.
선명해지는 그곳으로 가. Take my hands now. You are the cause of my euphoria.
In a recent interview with Billboard, Yoongi discussed what he hopes to achieve with the group's openness about mental illness. He said, quote, "Everyone in the world is lonely and everyone is sad. And if we know that everyone is suffering and lonely, I hope we can create an environment where we can ask for help and say things are hard when they're hard." It may seem like a simple or small effort, but the proof of its efficacy can be seen even just in the numbers of fans BTS has amassed. Their message that we never walk alone, and their stress on learning to love yourself has created a positive community that spans across the globe. We're from many different cultures and backgrounds, and yet many of us interact as if we're a family. If you look at the comments on Yoongi's mixtape, August D, nearly all of them are paragraphs, and nearly all of them are fans speaking about their struggles and how much he's helped them to feel less alone in their battle, or even how he's helped them get better. Yoongi's openness about his own depression and rough start in life created a space where we could connect with more than just his music. We could connect with each other. We could find others who have similar struggles, and even though they might be from the other side of the world, they suddenly don't seem so different from ourselves. BTS's music videos and short films have shown us what is sometimes the heartbreaking reality of mental illness. Attempted suicide, for example. They dare to show us just how severe mental illness can truly become if left untreated. But unlike many Hollywood depictions, they refuse to give us a tragedy. They validate how hard the struggle can be, but in the end, they show us that it's worth it to persevere. They remind us that we can find a family who cares, even if they're not biological. They remind us that no matter what, we're never alone. Someone out there understands how hard you're fighting to stay afloat.